Can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
So my experience to bring me here is a conclusion of my naval career, which is naval aviation for 26 years, and a progression through engineering and flight positions of increasing responsibility. And then at a time, I got out of the Navy, and I had to decide what my next career would be coming out of the Navy. So my next career was going to be either producing aircraft or satellites or teaching. And my last job in the Navy was as a analogous to a department chair for aerospace engineering or space engineering. And I realized that I enjoyed teaching. So at that time, I set myself up to teach STEM or computer science or aero engineering or physics or math classes. And I had to get another degree to make myself suitable for that particular state. And I taught there for about 18 years, 17 or 18 years. And then last year we came to Texas. And I came to Texas so I could be closer to family, take care of my mom, spend some more time with my family.
So what type of degrees / certifications do you have?
So the degrees that I have, so the undergraduate institution I went to was a Naval Academy, and everybody that goes there earns a Bachelor of Science degree in different areas. So you get a Bachelor of Science in History, Bachelor of Science in English, which sounds kind of counterintuitive. But 80% of the students there, they need to get an engineering degree. So my area of engineering was general engineering, heavily biased towards mechanical engineering. So that's my undergraduate degree. One of the things that the Navy does is they give you an opportunity during your tours to go back to earn a master's degree. And so I went back to the postgraduate institution that the Navy has called the Naval Postgraduate School. And I earned a master's degree in space systems technology, which was the design and employment of space systems. And then the degree that I earned just before I left the Navy was a master's in computer information sciences. And I did that to have a master's credential so I could begin to teach at the community colleges in areas of computing and informational sciences.
So with experience like that, why are you teaching in community colleges versus a big name 4-year university or something like that, or even in the private sector?
Well, I think part of it is a philosophy of service. I think there's a marvelous array of opportunities in STEM that generally isn't portrayed well or vigorously in the high school or even the college years. So it was my desire to get into the most effective space, which was students just out of high school, and try to invigorate them and interest them in areas of STEM, computer science. And I don't see that as necessarily different fields. It's really all one field, and it's different emphasis areas in that field.
Can you give your thoughts on the current education system in regards to preparing students for real-world careers or jobs in computer science or IT?
So do you mean the high school and below or high school and above?
High school and above.
I think that it's no secret that the current slate of academic institutions do a middling job of preparing students for work. But I don't think you can answer that directly with one question. I think you have to look at the distribution of students. So there's the students that are biased to the high end, and those students would generally have parents of reasonable income. So those students have been mentored. They've never had a challenge about where they'll live and where they'll eat. So they've been able to dedicate their time to academics. And then they're nourished pretty well to get into the 4-year system and do well. And that's probably on the order of maybe 18 to 20% of the college-going population. My most strident concern is with the students who have been fragile, and they don't really have a clear path when they get into their college-going years. And I think that it's really those students that represent 80% of the students in college that we can reach out and give additional opportunity. I think we can invigorate them. We have to do the college better, and we have to define the college better for them.
So based off of your experience in the field, can you give us your opinion on the impact of computer science and IT on the job market in the near future?
Calling computer science and IT and those associated fields, so big data, data science, machine learning, artificial neural networks, artificial intelligence, there's not really a word to describe the level of impact. Transformative fails in terms of scope. It is huge. It is absolutely huge. So we're looking at a time right now in the United States where we are 1 million workers short in people coming out of high school that know computer science. We also are approaching 200,000 or 300,000 workers short in areas of data science, and we're approaching arguably more than 1 million short in terms of cybersecurity. So I would say, if we sat down, we could not identify a job trajectory with more opportunity. This is a massive opportunity. We could not have done any better. The real challenge is, or the failure is, how do our academic systems reorient to that? So if you go and you ask the academic systems, being a 2-year college, a 4-year college, or some blend of those institutions, what's your distribution of students moving into the workforce, and you identified them by degrees, there's not, unfortunately or terribly, there's not good alignment between the number of degrees and the need. So we see areas where there's a huge amount of degrees, no need. In other areas, particularly in CS and IT, there's a huge need in middling degrees. So I think it's not a failure it's approaching a failure to appreciate the opportunities that exist and reorient our academic institutions to respond.
What career advice would you give to someone who, say, just graduated high school in order to prepare them for the future?
Well, I would do 2 things. I would give them the career advice, and then I would give them the college success advice. So the career advice is there's a taxonomy for identifying what they should do when they graduate. And I would say, don't focus on the career. That's a false lead. Focus on what you want to do and the skills that you need to do that. For example, when you came in here today, we were talking about drones. So an example would be, I want to be the world's expert in small drones to support visual imaging. That's a focused area. And what are the skills I need to know to do that? Well, you need to know a little bit of aerodynamics, a little bit of systems integration, some Arduino and Raspberry Pi work, and you need to know how to grok through code. So each one of those things has some type of a success path and a work path to it. You're not going to find that in a school. Frankly, you would run out of money trying to get a 4-year degree to enable you to thrive in that field. So then what you would want to do is you'd say, okay, I'm going to be a master of small-scale drones for visual imaging, and then what can you apply that to? Well, then you can apply it to ag. You can apply it to there's problems in the Sudan right now. There's probably one of the biggest famines that we've had in the last 50 years. You can manage port security by using drones. You can look at managing effective movement of automotive vehicles and trucks. You can do all sorts of things. So I think the thing is that the advice that I would give is define what you want to do and then work relentlessly to get that skill set to do those things. And notice what I didn't say. I didn't say go and pick a degree and expend all your money going to debt for the degree. So I think if a student wants a degree, they need a very serious discussion on what it takes to succeed in that degree. And here's some rationale for that. If 100 people start a 4-year degree now, probably 20% of them will finish in 4 years. Probably 40% of them will finish in 6 years. The rest of them won't finish. The ones that do finish will be in debt on an average of $27,000 to $38,000. So that's the measured outcome of our higher educational system right now, and that doesn't even reflect the unique challenges of the underrepresented minorities. So I think there needs to be a very serious conversation with the student and their family to realize if they want to get their degree, and that has significant value, it's still the most valuable thing you can do if you can afford it and if you can get it done. That's the most valuable thing you can do, and you're in the right degree area. But it's a family that needs to be engaged, and you have to start off with the intent that you're going to finish. Otherwise, you'll be out of money, you won't have a degree, and you won't have attained anything. And there's obviously more to talk about in that area.
Anything you would like to say? Any passing remarks?
Yeah, I think without sounding, without intending to sound too strident, I think that I can give a lot of opinions, and then those opinions can be disagreed with. But what I would say is, look at the statistics and then orient your decision points based on that. Here's an example. If we look and see how many people in high school are prepared for college, then the numbers are something like this, and it varies by state. The students in high school that are prepared to start college without remediation, it's about 38% of the students are prepared in math, and somewhere around 50% of the students are prepared in English. So then the question becomes, how do we get those students to be fully prepared in college so when they get there, they can have some assurance of finishing in a reasonable amount of time? So that's the first thing. The second thing is the customer model needs to change for a student when they go to college. When they come into college, they need to be an omnivorous learning organism, fully chewing through all the material they can, and they need to be very aggressive, and they need to not sit back on their heels and say, what are you going to teach me? What's the pacing of this class? How are you going to help me learn? The question needs to become, they need to seize that instructor and seize the time opportunity and wrench as much learning out of that as they can. And the reason is this. When you graduate from college, you have on average of 55 years of productive employment left. So you have a learning model that you've engaged in for 16 years, and that learning model in no way other than a foundation will serve you going for the next 55 years. So you need to establish a personal learning model that would allow you to continually refresh for the next 55 years so you stay current.
All right. What are you doing professionally right now other than teaching?
Well, I do a lot of coding. So I think a couple of things. One is the field that I'm teaching here, I'm taking a class forever. I'm always taking a class. So the class that I'm taking right now is, it has to do with information assurance and its configuration of firewall. So it's PFSense certification. Last summer I took Palo Alto firewall certification. So for me to do a good job, to do a credible job of being in front of the students and teaching them current technologies and techniques, I need to be current. So I'm usually, in some cases I'm a week ahead of them, in some cases I'm 6 months or a year ahead of them, but I'm always learning. I think from the development side, I do a lot of scripting development using front-end tools. I do a lot of scripting development using Python, typically for processing of visual images to some advantage.
So what would you say to someone who just wanted to get into software development? What advice would you give them in closing?
If they have no experience, then I would strongly recommend that they jump on Coursera and they take a 5-course sequence that Coursera offers through the University of Michigan. It's offered by a professor named Chuck Severance. And that 5-course sequence is a programming sequence that starts off with a very, very gentle basics of programming, but it progresses through very sophisticated skill acquisition to use Python for data analysis. That's what it comes down to. Students that finish that, and that sequence is free. So students who finish that are then poised, based on their math background, to move into data science and data analysis. So if you have a motivated high school student that progresses through that and knows math sufficiently, probably a year after they get out of high school, they can be making more than $100,000. So I think the question becomes, you don't need to wait until you're done with high school. You don't need to wait until you're done with a certain percent of college. I think the cool thing about learning now, and the awesome thing about learning now, it is only a reflection of your dedication and your relentless work ethic. So if you're willing to work and you're willing to grind, then the time is now. This is the best time to be alive. But you got to bring your A game.
All right, thanks.
Okay.
Yep.